Next, we're going to take a look at a feature in Photoshop that a lot of people don't really take advantage of, and that is using actions. So I'm going to start by opening an image. I'm going to turn off my timeline, just uncheck. An action is a recordable set of directions that you can play within Photoshop to automate processes that you may do a lot of or that are repetitive, take a lot of time, etc. Now there are some tasks that are good for using an action for, such as reformatting your image sizes, adding a black stroke to an image, converting to black and white, those types of things. Some things you cannot do in an action, and those types of things include using the lasso tool to create a selection. Now, using actions isn't necessarily what you would call essential when working in Photoshop. You've seen that you can do whatever you need to do and do it quite well within Photoshop without using actions. However, if you combine Photoshop with the power of actions, then you're making your life easier, you're being more productive, etc. Some things that actions are really good for are resizing images for either print or web. If you had 1,000 or maybe more images that needed to be resized for the web from a folder you had prepped them in for print, you could sit there and individually resize every single one of those images, but wouldn't it be easier to just select the folder and then select an action, a preset of directions, click a play button, and then walk away? And that's some of the power that you get with using actions. Another example would be if you wanted to add a copyright watermark to all of your photos. You can create an action that does that for you. Now, when creating an action, and the action panel is the one over here to the right that looks like a play button, when I click on it, you can see a lot of pre-existing default actions that come preloaded within Photoshop. Some of them include vignette, different frames, molten lead type, a sepia action, etc. Once you create an action, you can always go back and duplicate it and make small changes to have multiple actions that do something a little different. You can turn different steps on and off within the action. You can edit the action. Maybe you wanted to make a change on one of the sliders for one of the things that you had done on an adjustment layer or something else. You can change those settings, no problem. So nothing is permanent once an action is created. Now, once you've created an action in any version of Photoshop, that action is compatible with all other Photoshop versions. So if it was created in CS6, it will still work in Creative Cloud 2015 as long as the functionality of what you use to create the action within Photoshop, a tool or something like that, hasn't changed. Now let's take a look at the Actions panel. I'm going to pull it out, and you'll see that over here to the right you have your Actions menu with several different options, which we'll review momentarily. You'll have this default actions folder, and that's an action set with several actions within it. To the left is just whether or not you're turning on and off all of the commands in an action, and it's better to just leave that on as well. Now when you click out beside one of the actions, then you can see each of the individual steps is listed here. And so you can turn one step on or off within the action very easily. Now if you come to the bottom, you can see it looks very familiar. It's very similar to a lot of the panel options that we have in other panels within Photoshop. We have our trash can, which allows us to drag actions to discard them, or you can just select an action and then click the trash can to delete it. You have the new action button out to the left of that. It looks just like the new layer button. You click on it, and then you can name what your action is going to be, what set you want to place it within, if you want a function key shortcut for your action, and if you want to assign it a color. So very, very similar to the layers panel. To the left of that is to create a new set. Default actions is an action set. Monique Baby is an action set. Bo Baby is an action set. Those are all action sets, and they contain multiple actions within them. It is strongly recommended that you create action sets to help organize your actions, because if you just create all your actions under default actions and then you try to go back and find what you had used for a particular client or to get a particular effect, chances are you're going to have a hard time finding it. Now, once you have an action selected, that enables you to use the play action button. You can begin recording and add to an action. Let's say I come down here, turn this off so I'm not through yet, select the step up here. I can hit record and add to this action. And then the stop button out to the left, once you're recording, that's enabled so that you can stop recording. Now in the menu, you can also see that you can create new action, new set. You can duplicate an action just by selecting the action and then going to your menu and selecting duplicate. And that allows you to change one or two things about an action without having to re-record the entire thing from scratch. You can delete it or play the action from here. Begin recording, record again, insert a menu item, stop, conditional path, all of these things. And we'll go into detail over many of these options later in the lesson. First, what I would like to do is go ahead and let's create an action. Now, if you want to view your actions in button mode, right now we're viewing them in list mode, but you can view them in button mode. And that's where, if they've been assigned colors, it comes in handy. It helps you to point them out. And what you'll notice is you do not see any of your options. So this is just basically for playing your actions. I'm going to go and turn that back off so we can see the default panel options. What we see in our default actions is just part of the actions that come loaded within Photoshop. There are actually 9 additional sets of built-in actions in the panel menu, and those include commands, frames, image effects, lab, which is a black and white technique that we've looked at, production, stars, trails, text effects, textures, and video actions. These are all pre-loaded, and in order to select one of them, all I have to do is click on it and it loads it, and we can see I have several different frames loaded. So I'm going to just select the spatter frame and click the play button, and what we'll see is Photoshop is working through the steps. And if we zoom in over to the edge, you can see we've got this spatter frame effect added to our image. Now, if I click the arrow out beside spatter frame, you can see all of the different steps necessary to add that frame. And if I want to go in and edit one of those steps, all I have to do is I can double click on that step and it will begin to record and open that step and allow me to go in. Right now I'm at a 15 pixel spray radius. Let's say I want to go up to 25 and click OK. Alright, and you'll see that it's no longer recording. Now in my image, I'm going to go back to opening my image, and you'll see the frame is removed. This time I'm going to play the spatter frame action, and we see a much wider effect. And now if I click on spatter, you see the spray radius is now at 25, whereas previously it was set at 15. So editing an action is extremely easy to do. And like I said previously, perhaps you don't want to edit that action. Maybe you want to duplicate it first. And so to duplicate an action, first you just select the action Go into your action menu, select duplicate, and you'll see spatter frame copy. And so maybe this one is going to be 15 and this one is going to be 25. I'm going to go back up here to my original and I need to change my spatter back to 15. So I'm going to come down here to spatter and I am going to double click on it. My options window opens up here. Click OK. I'm no longer recording, and you see the spray radius has been changed back to 15. And so now I have two different spatter frames, and it was really easy for me to achieve that. Let's play a couple of other different actions real quick. Going to again go back. Maybe this time I will select photo corners, and I can push the play button down here, or I can double click on the action and you see that it adds photo corners to my image. Simply done. Now if we look at my layers menu, you can see that it created a new background, added the effects to my image, which was a drop shadow, giving it some realism. Let's go back again to our original image. Let's load a different action set. We'll load the image effects action, and you can see here we've got a lot of different options. If we select the light rain, play that action, you can see over here what's happening. And you see now if we zoom in, it appears as if it is raining. And I can always turn that down just a little bit if I want to. So now we know where the pre-loaded action sets are and how to access them. We know how to play an action. We know how to edit an action. We know how to duplicate an action. Now let's discuss how you would go about running an action on an entire folder of images. And this is called batching. If I wanted to batch the lab black and white action, so let me load that. I would first select my action and then I would come over to File, Automate, Batch. You'll see that the action set I have selected is listed here, but I can go and select a different one if I want to. The action, and there's only one in this set, is also selected, but if I select one of the others and I click here, then I could select from the actions. Let's go back to lab. And I can choose to apply the action to all opened files, so I could open 5 images and just apply the action there. Or I can go and select folder and then click choose, and then I can go in and select the folder of images that I want to apply the action to. So I'm going to select Action Images C and select Choose, and you'll see here it gives my path. Now I can override any open commands. I can choose if there's more than one folder in that file I've got selected. Then I can include subfolders if I wish. And if there's any errors, I can choose Stop for Errors, and it'll stop and an error menu will pop up and I can click OK or cancel. And so I'm going to leave Stop for Errors selected. And then I can choose a destination. And if I choose none, it's going to open all the images and run the action and just leave the images open. Or I can save it in the same folder and close when it's complete. Or I can have it place it in a folder. And we're going to place this in a folder, and then we'll select Choose. I'm going to place the folder in the Action Images C folder so they'll all be together still. I'm going to click New Folder, and I'm going to name this one Lab Black, or Lab BW for Lab Black and White. Click Create. You see my folder is now there. I'm going to select that, and you can see here my path is listed. If I want to change up what my file names are going to be, I can list all the different options are given here. I'm just going to leave those. And I'm going to click OK. And what we see here is it's saying adjust the hue and saturation for what it wants me to do. And so when I'm happy with whatever I've got, I can click Continue. the hue saturation window pops up, and so I can pull the saturation out if I want this to be truly black and white. I can make it a little darker if I want. Click OK and save. The next image, same thing. I can go in, make whatever adjustments I want, click OK, click save, it does so, and the next one. Make my adjustments, click OK, select save, and when it is finished, I can go into Bridge. You see my Actions folder. Here are the 3 original images. I click the Lab Black and White folder, and here are my images. So much easier. Now, that was an action that had steps that required my input. Let's look at an action that does not. So, this time we'll do a frames action, and I'm going to select a strokes frame. Go over to File, Automate, Batch. I'm going to select a folder to work from because I don't have any images open. This time I will select the People folder within my Action Images A. Select Choose, leave everything. I'm going to place it in a Destination folder within its same folder. Click a new one, and I will name this one Stroke Frame. Click Create, so it will place them there. Select Choose and click OK, and it will run my action. Click Save, click Save, and there we go. Now, if we go into our Bridge, select our People folder, we have our Stroke Frame folder, and we can see where that has been added. So now we have a good idea on how to play actions. Let's go ahead and record one. I'm going to open an image, and some of the things that I do to every single one of my images are I duplicate my background layer, I add a levels adjustment layer, and a vibrance layer. So I'm going to create an image prep action that automatically does these steps for me. And then before I begin to work on any of my images, I'm just going to run this action. It'll have it in there, and I can just go in and tweak the settings on each image as I want. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new image set. So my new set is going to be image prep. Go ahead and put a space in there. So image space prep. There we go. Okay, and now I'm ready to record my first action in this set. So I'm going to click the Create New Action button, and I am going to name this one Prep Start Up Prep. Okay, I don't need a shortcut for it. I click Record. And the first thing I do always is I duplicate my background layer. The next thing I always do is I always add a levels adjustment layer. And within that levels adjustment layer, I can almost guarantee that I'm going to bring in the shadows and the highlights and bump up the midtones just a little bit on about 85% of all images. Additionally, I almost always add a vibrance adjustment layer, and I would go in and bump up my vibrance maybe about 10. Now, when I'm through with that, I can click the stop button. And let's say that I'm going to edit a portrait session that I did. I can select all my images and just run this action. Or I can open 5 or 10 images at a time, batch the action just on my open images. Now, if I wanted to, I can go into my startup prep action and come up and begin to do things like insert a stop. If I want to insert a pause or a condition, this is where I would go and do those things. Now it's time for you to create your own action. You're going to go to page 816, and you're going to follow the directions on 816, 817, and 818 to create an action that will add a thin black border around an image. For the action set name, you are going to place this action in a 1302 folder set. So you'll click here and you'll name this ARTC 1302 and click OK. And then for the action name, you will name it 18A black border. So if I'm clicking the new action, it would be 18A black border. Then you'll follow the directions. You'll run the action on an image of your choice, and that image will be turned in as 18A underscore your last name underscore action.psd. Make sure, however, that you have created your action set and named your actions correctly, because later in the lesson you're going to package your actions that you've created and have to turn those in. Now, a conditional action is an action that pauses or requires that an image or document meet a specific set of conditions or condition in order for it to work. The next action you're going to create is on page 819. You're going to follow the steps from page 819 through 822 to create a conditional action. This action will also be placed in your ARTC 1302 set, and you'll name it 18B watermark action. And for this action, what it's going to do is walk you through how to add a watermark automatically to a folder of images. You will need to run the action on an image, and that will be named 18B underscore your last name watermark.psd, and that will be turned in with your chapter 18 folder. Alright, so let's go through the menu options right quick. I'm going to cancel out of that. If I was going to continue to make image prep actions, I would probably have one for sharpening, one for resizing, one for my watermark, and so I would be able to just go through and do a lot of my regularly repeated steps through the use of actions. So I am going to run the lab action on this photograph. Let me just go in and make adjustments. There we go. I would probably go in and adjust my levels as well. Again, almost every single image gets a levels adjustment. Alright, my actions panel, going to look at the menu. You'll see here I've got a levels adjustment layer, I have my lab channel layer, and then my original background image. Okay, now let's look at the menu. Record again. Well, when you select record again, Photoshop runs through all the steps in the action, opens all the dialog boxes associated with them so you can adjust their settings, and then updates the action accordingly. So if you want to refresh everything within the action, you can play that and it will open up all those boxes for you to go in and make those adjustments. Let's say you wanted to duplicate an action and then adjust each step somewhat. This would be a good option. Insert menu item means that, now this is used because whenever you're creating an action, you can't record any items in the view and window menus like zooming in, fitting it on screen, showing or hiding guides, etc. But you can insert those types of movements through insert menu item. Now you can do this live while recording your action, or you can go and you can do it after the fact. Now insert stop is if you want the action to pause and give the person running the action instructions on what to do next. Like open a specific file, check a specific setting, edit a layer mask. Maybe you create the layer mask and then the person has to go in and actually paint in the mask. Those types of things are done by inserting stops. Now insert conditional, that you record a conditional action that chooses among several previously recorded actions in order to meet criteria set by you. So what you could do is record a lot of separate actions like I talked about with my image prep, and maybe I have different document sizes. Used to be, before they updated the crop tool, I would crop each of the images as a 5x7, an 8x10, etc. And so this came in really handy for me doing that, and I would just have multiple folders labeled 5x7, 8x10, etc. Now insert path is grayed out here, but Photoshop can record the act of drawing a path even if it can't record the pen tool settings. But let's say you wanted to insert a path that you've already drawn, you could have that path placed on different documents. Now Action Options opens the Action Options dialog box so you can edit the action's name, keyboard shortcut, and color. So this action is selected. If I select Action Options, it gives me the option of editing the name. I can add a shortcut or a color if I so wish, and that's the Action Options. Playback Options allows you to play the action in slow motion or accelerated. So if I select this, I can see where I can do accelerated, which is normal. Step by step is going to show me each individual step. It's not going to go fast. Or I can have it pause for a few seconds of my choosing as it goes through. I'm going to leave this on accelerated. But if you were interested in seeing exactly what an action is doing, you could select the step by step, and that gives you the opportunity to then see. And then allow tool recording tells Photoshop to capture strokes you're making with brush tools and the paths you're drawing with the pen and shape tools. Now you have to turn this setting on before you record any of these brush strokes or tools. Then you'll be able to replay, therefore recreating those steps anytime you wish. And then you can clear your actions, reset them, load them, replace them. Here's those 9 different sets, and close here as well. Now as far as rearranging your actions, you can rearrange your sets, etc. just like you can rearrange layers, just by dragging them up and down. Now another very handy thing for using actions is droplets. I'm going to go to my image prep and my startup prep. I'm going to select that action, and then I'm going to come over here to File, Automate, Create Droplet. A droplet is a shortcut that can be placed on your desktop that you can drag a folder of images over to without even opening Photoshop, and you can apply that droplet or that action contained within the droplet to that folder of images. Let me demonstrate. First of all, this droplet that I'm going to create is my startup prep, and I'm going to put this droplet on my desktop, and I'm going to name it Image Prep Demo. Now I could have this droplet, I could just put all of my images into one folder, or I could create a different droplet for each individual client, which is sometimes easier than trying to remember to move folders around, etc. So Image Prep Demo is going to be labeled App, so it'll be easy to see. That's going to be placed on my desktop. I'm going to click Save, and you can see my path is listed here. It's going to play the startup prep action from the image prep set. I can include subfolders if I want, or I can not include them by leaving this unchecked. I can have it stop for errors, and now I can choose where I want it to once again save those images. And so I am going to have it save them to a folder. I'm going to select Choose. I am going to work in the Action Images B folder, so I will select that. I will create a new folder, Image Prep, Create. You'll see my folder is there. Select Choose. I can rename it here. Some actions contain Save As commands, and if you don't want it to save as in a specific other folder, you can override that here. The action I created does not have any Save As commands. I'm going to click OK, and now if we go to my desktop, you can see here that I have Image Prep Demo App, and that has been created. It's this arrow with PS that I can just drag my folder onto. So let me bring my folder over, and I'm going to be using Action Images B. So I just drag that on top of the droplet, release. You see Photoshop pops open. It's applying the action to it. I click save. And it's just going to go through each of the images in the folder and apply the steps that I had recorded. Once again, those steps were duplicating the background layer, adding a levels adjustment layer, adding a vibrance layer. And when it's done, I'll open Adobe Bridge, select that folder, go into image prep, and you'll see that these PSDs now exist. Originally they were JPEGs. I open one of the images and you see over to the right it has created each of those steps for me. And that's creating droplets. Now what you need to do for 18C is you are going to need to create a droplet from your 18B action. And that droplet is going to need to be located within your Chapter 18 folder because you're going to need to turn that in. It needs to be labeled 18C and your last name. So you're going to select your ARTC 1302 image set. Within that, you're going to select 18B for the droplet, and you'll go to File, Automate, Create Droplet, select that 18B. Make sure you place it in your Chapter 18 folder and that it's renamed 18C, your last name. I'm going to cancel out of that. And the last thing we're going to discuss regarding actions is how you would go about sharing them. Now, sharing involves two different aspects. One is you being able to access different actions and load them on your machine. And the other is you being able to package your actions and save them and use them on a variety of machines or share them with teammates, etc. Now, if you want to load an action that you find on the internet, first of all you have to do is begin by going and locating an action. And there are dozens of websites out there that have Photoshop actions. So if you do a quick search, you can find where there are several for sale. There are several free ones as well. So let's pick a site and you'll see here's an old film one, film effect, faded film, matte, HDR. Let's do one of the HDR ones. We'll select this one. And here is the link to download the free sample action. Click on that, and it's asking me about saving the file. I'm going to save the file, click OK. Where do I want it to place it? I'm just going to put it on my desktop. It's going to save it there. You see it's saved. Now I'm going to exit out here. I'm going to close my images, and we'll see that the zip file with that action has been placed on my desktop. I'll double click on it to unzip it, and here's the free action. If I go into it, you can see here is the actual action file. It says action and it's an ATN file. I can take that action, click on it, and just drag it onto my empty workspace. Now if I go to my actions, it's automatically loaded the action set here. And so now, if I open an image from Bridge, a pixel-based layer, and now I'm going to run the subtle HDR action. Now here are all the steps to that action. Now, next, I'm just going to hit play, and it's going to start the process of going through each step. And so it's going slower than it would normally. And so you can see that it packaged all of those steps into this layer group that I can turn on and off. And now I can open that up and I can actually see each of the individual steps done here and make adjustments as I want. Now, how would you go about saving a set of actions or an individual action to share? And this is what you're going to have to do for 18D. I am going to duplicate my startup prep action and place it in the 1302 folder just for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to drag it down, and now it's in 1302. So the first step to saving a set of actions is select the set or the action that you want to share. And it's important to note that you can only save actions that are part of a set. You cannot save individual actions. With it selected, I'm going to come up into my panel menu, come down, select Save Actions. It's going to ask where I want it to save it. And I am going to come back to my desktop, create a Chapter 18 folder. And that's where I want my action to be placed. Click Save. And now, if I go to my desktop, in my Chapter 18 folder, you'll see my action is listed. Now, you need to do this for the actions that you created for 18A and 18B. You'll need to turn those actions in along with the images that you created and your droplet that you created. And accurately doing so will be 18D. Now, if you have a Mac droplet that you've created, you need to save it with a .exe extension for it to work on a Windows machine. And those directions are found at the bottom of page 830. Directions on how you can save your actions in an external set for 18D can be found on the bottom of page 829. Actions are extremely powerful. They can save you so much time. I know I used to start a batch of images converting to black and white or something. Maybe I had 2,000 or 3,000 images that I needed to convert that I had taken that day. And I would start my batch and go to bed and get up the next morning and they were all converted, ready and waiting for me to begin on. So extremely powerful and very helpful.